and welcome to Tough Pigs at 20, a Muppet fan podcast from ToughPigs.com. This is the series where we're looking back on the past 2 decades of the website for Muppet fans who grew up, featuring interviews with the writers and artists who helped make it happen. Our guest today joined the team in 2016, having authored several dozen articles. He's a comedy writer, a podcast writer, a musical theater writer, and even a Sesame Street writer. Here on Tough Pigs, he serves as our resident music expert. We are extremely proud to welcome Louie Pearlman to the podcast. Hello, Louie.
Hi, Joe. It's nice to talk to you. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. It's always nice to share some time with my friend Louie.
Yes, you're my fave.
Ah, well, you heard it here first, folks. I'm the favorite. Move over, Louie's mom.
Yep, it's true. You're my favorite one.
Well, before we talk about how much you love me, let's get into some of your Tough Pigs work.
Sure. I mean, all I want to talk about is how great you are, but, it's fun.
Go on. No, Louie, can you please tell me and all the fine folks listening to this podcast, how did you join Tough Pigs?
Well, I've been a fan of the site since the early 2000s when it started. I was a young comedian in New York when I discovered the site. I was in my early 20s, and I was really excited to find a site about the Muppets that had a really fun, specific, snarky, and adult point of view. I really enjoyed that. And some of the early articles, like especially the early costume parades, another one that stands out that I think about a lot is the review of the comic Big Boy Meets the Muppets, Jim Henson and the Muppets.
Classic.
All those articles I just thought were so funny. Some of them, when I was reading them, I would laugh so hard that I'd cry. So it made me want to be involved. And then I met you and Ryan at several different Muppet events in New York, because I'm lucky enough to live in the same place as you, which makes it easier. We became friendly. Then we started, I believe, hanging out. I got you involved in some Muppet projects that some friends of mine were doing. And then from there, I think you asked me to write for the site, and I was really excited to give it a try. And now here we are, I think 7-ish years later. And
something like that.
I'm still a regular contributor, which I'm very happy to be for Tough Pigs when I have the time.
You are. I distinctly remember meeting you at Muppet Vault events.
Yeah.
You were a regular there, which as people who listen to this podcast know, this is probably the 3rd or 4th time Muppet Vault has come up as the the thing that has introduced us to each other. So very grateful.
Yeah, it was a great way for our community to come together, for sure. And you guys did such a good job curating it. I always saw new stuff I'd never seen before, and just recontextualize, which I always really enjoyed. It was always super fun to be with a bunch of other Muppet fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. But it's funny, I had kind of forgotten until you mentioned just now. You said, you had hooked me up with some Muppet projects, and Ryan as well. And most folks that are on this podcast, we've brought opportunities to them, or we've met at other opportunities, but not many people brought stuff to the table for us. And the one, can you explain a little bit about what that live Muppet show improv thing was? Because I of course can't remember even the name of it.
Yeah. So it was a project that was done by my friend Caitlin Fontana, who's an old comedy partner of mine. And it was a project where they were writing new scripts for canceled TV shows. So they had the ambitious idea to write a script for The Muppet Show. And I designed the costumes for it, which was kind of a funny way for me to be involved because it's definitely not one of the things that I actually normally do. So I really just tried to give every character an accent that gave them the hint of being a Muppet without it being too over the top. Definitely inspired by those costume articles over the years from Tough Pigs. I mean, really, that gave me a really good understanding as to what not to do, which is actually really helpful. Just sort of like working in that amateur space, trying to make someone look like a character you really loved. So like, for example, the actor that was playing Fozzie Bear, I gave him a pork pie hat and ears and a little spotted tie, but nothing else. And then that was enough for him. You know what I
Right,
mean?
he was completely naked aside from that.
Yeah, and otherwise he was as nude as the day he was born. It was
He
very
was he was
exciting for everybody.
bare naked.
Bear, oh boy, Joe.
See what
Oh
I did
God,
there?
you're fired.
No, I remember I remember I'll never forget the guy who played Rolf the dog, and I think he was just like how do you do a Rolf the dog costume? And he was just wearing like a brown suit, and he did this thing where he was
I just
like
gave him
trying
little
to,
ears. Yeah.
he gave him ears, and he like was tying a tie, and he did it in this way that was just hysterical. I wish I could describe it properly.
Well, I think it was the physicality of the
Yes,
way that the puppets tie the tie, but
right.
doing it as a human. And I think there was a lot of that sort of winking at the audience in the show, and I think that's what made it work. And also the script was really genuinely funny and very heartfelt. So it was super cool. It was lovely. It was a lovely project to be involved in. And at one point there was a panel at the end. There was sort of a talk back that was sort of about the legacy of the Muppet Show at the end of one of the performances, and I got you roped into being part of the panel, and I think you did a
Yeah.
wonderful job, which doesn't surprise me.
That was super fun. The panel was your friend Caitlin Fontana, who moderated the panel, and it was myself. I wrangled Noel McNeil, puppeteer Noel McNeil, to be on the panel,
Yeah.
and Jennifer Keishan Armstrong, who is a very accomplished pop culture writer, who's become a good friend of ours as well. And it's
Yeah.
funny, like I actually saw a picture from that panel not too long ago, and it's just like, oh, look at this! Look at all these friends that like I didn't really, except for Noel, I didn't really know any of these people before that, and now years later, we're still all very close in one way or another. Yeah, I did that one night, and then I believe Ryan, they did a trivia night after one of the shows, and Ryan
Yeah, and I
provided all the
believe Ryan
trivia.
ran that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was super, super fun, and like a great way to be introduced to other people who are huge Muppet fans in different ways than us. Like
That's
people who
right.
may not,
Absolutely.
yeah, people who may not be like so interested in like writing an article or being on a podcast, but they are interested in like producing an entirely new episode of the Muppet Show. With
Yeah.
people wearing costumes as opposed to Muppets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was fantastic. What a fun
Yeah.
thing that was.
It was a great project. Yeah, it was lovely.
So, Louis, I kind of want to do a little bit of time travel. I want to go back to January 29th, 2016. This is the first article that you wrote that you are credited with. I don't believe you wrote anything before this, but man,
That's
I've been
correct.
wrong
Yeah.
before. What do you happen to remember what that article was?
Yeah, it was an article about all the times that Donald Trump had been parodied in a Muppet project. And, I think it's such a little time capsule of how we were feeling politically at the time. And it also allowed me to be somewhat snarky, which I really wanted to be on the site to pay tribute to the early days of the site. So it allowed me to be sort of snarky and silly. But, in retrospect, like obviously, and this isn't really a Muppet thing, this is just a life thing. I think we were really we didn't really at the time have an understanding as to how many people Donald Trump was really speaking to with his politics. And I don't feel that the article enabled him. It's a very anti-Trump piece, but I do feel that like a lot of like writing and culture and comedy at the time, it's didn't take it as seriously as it should have, like what was going to happen come that election cycle. We didn't even think at the time that he was going to be the nominee for the Republicans at the
Yeah.
time. We thought he was going to be sort of a flash in the political bag, but instead he ended up being the president, and it was a nightmare. And you
Yeah,
guys wrote about
it
it
was not
extensively
great.
on the site. Yeah.
It's one of those things. I've said this many times before, but we have a public voice through this website, and there are some very important issues out in the world, and it's important for us to use that voice in a responsible manner. And
Yeah, and you guys always done a really good job of that, which is one of the reasons
you.
why I love writing for the site. Absolutely.
and it's interesting to me as I think we've all been forced to be pretty political over the last 5 years or so, one way or another. We're all kind of forced to show our true colors, as it were. But it is interesting that was kind of your entry point into the ToughPigs world.
Yeah, because I don't think it's totally representative of like this most of the stuff I've done for the site, you know? It's sort of
Right.
was a one-off. It's not like then I became like the political Muppet writer on the site. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, look, if you wanted to be, we would have gladly made that space for you. But no, that was not your forte.
No, it wasn't really what I wanted to do either.
Right. But you did a great job with that article, which by the way is called "Make America Hate Again," which is pretty
Yes.
good. It's pretty good.
Yes. I believe you thought of
Um,
that.
I might. Oh, did I? Did I just
Yeah, I think
compliment
that might have
myself?
been your
Oops.
headline, yeah.
Oh. Well. You do have a forte though, and I feel pretty confident in saying that you are our music expert on
Scooter,
Tough Pigs,
Scooter. I'm in love with Scooter. Oh wait,
and you're in
sorry.
love with
Yes, yes,
Scooter.
I'm the music expert. Yes.
You have written several music-related articles.
Hmm.
Let's go through a few of them.
Sure.
So first, you wrote for us the Manhattan music of the Muppets. Do you remember this
Oh,
one?
that was fun. I loved that one. Yeah.
What was that?
That was an article that was about the songs that exemplified New York in the overall Muppet catalog. And there's some really, really, really fun ones from Sesame Street and from the Muppet Show as well that sort of exemplify the crossover between like when, the New York music sensibilities sort of, bleed into the Muppet sensibilities. And there's a lot of cool examples of that. Yeah.
There was, yeah. I appreciated that you didn't just pick the songs that mention New York. That could have been
No.
an easy thing, but you picked things like like a Blondie song.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because Blondie's like a quintessential New York band, and they were
yeah,
so great on the Muppet Show. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, there's stuff in there that's just like it feels very New Yorky, and it's of course like it's easy for us as people who live in New York City to make that point. I'm sure that there's people like in Anthony in Minnesota who who's saying like I don't care about New York. It's only because you live there, and it's like well, it's also
Well,
there's
New
quite a
York is
scene
is
here.
is one of the cultural centers of the world, and everybody sort of understands the aesthetic of New York, at least in on like a rough basis. So it makes it easy to write about and delve into. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, totally. Definitely a lot of people that live here, you can get really navel-gazy when it comes to just being self-obsessed with living in New York. But that being said, I really moved here. One of the reasons why I moved to this city was because I was such a fan of the music that had come out of this city. So, it's one of the best things about living here is having that connection to the music and culture that came out of the city. And the
Yeah.
Muppets have a very, very, very close ties to New York City, obviously. So, it's one of the best reasons to be here is that I get to do a bunch of Muppet stuff.
Yeah, they took this whole city. Well, at least one borough
Well,
of the
only
city.
one
They took
borough.
it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, the Muppets Take the Bronx would be a really different movie.
Staten Island is free as a bird, with
Yes.
no Muppet influence whatsoever.
Ever. Yeah.
You wrote an article called "Emmett Otter Songs Ranked by Christmassiness."
Yeah. I don't remember. I feel like that was your idea for
It
me
may
to
have been my
write
pitch,
that.
but that doesn't mean I had any ideas beyond the title.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to write a parody of listicles with that article. And I wanted to be very, very, very silly because also, like, Christmas stuff really bothers me. And that has specifically to do with, like, my upbringing. We didn't celebrate Christmas growing up because I'm Jewish. We did always have a meal with my family, which was always really, really wonderful, and we still do. But the Christmas time was always a really hard time in my house because my family ran a women's casual clothing store, and there's always a lot of pressure to perform over the Christmas season. So yeah, so I sort of wrote that article with my tongue firmly planted in cheek, and then sort of tried to write at the end how important When the River Meets the Sea is to me, which is just like, for me, it's one of my favorite songs. And it's just like always a deeply spiritual experience when I listen to that song.
Yeah, and Emmett Otter in particular, it's funny how it's such a Christmassy special, but at the same time, it's not Christmassy at all.
Yeah, which is
And
great,
like,
which is the reasons why I actually like it.
yeah, I mean, I actually I agree with that, and but like the songs in particular are like like the one bathing suit that Grandma Otter wore, or hole in the ain't no hole in the wash tub or whatever. Like these have nothing to do with Christmas. They're just about
No,
living in
those
a
are
small
sort
town.
of jug band songs more than Christmassy
Yeah,
songs.
exactly.
Yeah.
Barbecue has nothing to do with Christmas, which is, like I said, it's great and it's weird. And I mean, Muppet Christmas Carol is kind of the same way. Like, not like there's a couple songs that are very Christmassy, obviously, like One More Sleep Till Christmas or whatever. But like something like A Thankful Heart, even though it feels very Christmassy, it doesn't have to be a Christmas song. Like, it's just
That's
about being
right.
thankful.
That's right.
All right, so let's move on. The musical legacy of the Muppet Babies.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of the music from the original show, and I wanted to write a review of some of the original albums that came out of the show. And those songwriters, I mean, the songs are really catchy and also like owe a lot to like 50s and 60s pop idioms, which I love and like wasn't totally necessary, but they kind of turned the Muppet Babies into like a doo-wop group with a lot of the way the songs sound, which was so unique, and I love that they were allowed to do that. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, that songwriting team that wrote most of the stuff, but I remember researching it for that article. And then the new stuff had a really different sound to it from the Disney show, the new Muppet Babies, but also like had a kind of a specific sound. Sort of everything sounded like show tunes, sort of old-fashioned show tunes, which really fits with the history of the Muppets. So I think that they're doing really good work with the songs for both shows, and I was really happy to highlight that. That was definitely an article I loved writing, mainly because the Muppet Baby songs were a real something I remember very fondly from my childhood, and I just sort of wanted to share that with our readers.
I'm glad you did because, so like growing up, I never loved the original Muppet Babies because I always felt like I would much rather be watching the actual Muppets.
Yes. Yeah.
But I did own the records, and I can remember listening to like Rocket to the Stars on my record player, and it never really hit me because it's so much like ingrained in the back of my brain somewhere that these were such a specific like 1950s doo-wop style. Like that's the only style. They did not stray very far. Whereas like I feel like the new Muppet Babies and probably every other preschool show, it's like they try to emulate a lot of different styles, and especially like more popular styles that kids would recognize now. But like kids in the 80s, we didn't
metal,
care about doo-wop.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of electronica,
Screamo.
dance music. Yeah, oh
Yes.
man, kids love Screamo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dogcore. Do you know what dogcore is,
Dogcore?
Joe?
No.
That's
Rolf the dog
hardcore
would love
bands
that.
that's hardcore bands that have actual dogs as lead vocalists.
Really? That's
So
a
it's
thing?
just dogs going woof 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 while
It's like
bands are playing.
like the old Christmas like dogs barking jingle bells thing?
No, it's like they'll just have a dog on stage who just barks whenever he wants when they're playing.
Wow, all right. Well, good for them. I'm
Yeah,
glad the dogs
dogcore.
have jobs.
Yeah, exactly. The dogs need jobs too. The dogs need to sing.
Do they play piano at least?
I hope so.
Or
Imagine.
maybe Rolf has the copyright on that. I don't know.
Yeah, for dogs playing pianos. Yeah.
Right. So 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing a series that many of our listeners hopefully know called The Muppet Show 40 Years Later, where we were revisiting the Muppet Show episodes almost exactly 40 years after each of them had aired. So it was a big 5-year project that I'm very proud of our team for successfully making it to the end. But
Yeah.
you wrote, well, actually, before we talk about what you wrote, you helped inspire the whole series.
That's true. Yeah. There was another site that I write for called rebeatmagazine.com where we did all the Monkeys episodes 50 years after they aired. So we decided to do it over ToughPigs. But the ToughPigs project was a much longer project because there's only 2 seasons of the Monkeys and there is 5 seasons of the Muppet Show. So when we finished that, it was really insane to think about where my life was when we started that project and where my life is now. We just finished it a few months ago. It was kind of wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been such a constant.
Well, and I loved the idea so much when you told me about the monkeys, 50 years later idea. Thankfully, you guys gave us permission to steal the idea. Thank you, Rebeat
Yes.
Magazine.
Yes.
But it's funny. I was looking at a lot of those reviews that you had written, and so what people don't really know is, before we would start each season, the ToughPigs team would all kind of get on a Google Doc, and we would claim episodes. Everyone kind of claim a couple, and then once everyone is chimed in, everyone kind of claims a couple more until it's all filled in. You tended to go after a lot of the music heavy artists, which of course there's a lot of musicians throughout, but I just noticed like some of the ones that stand out to me were like Liberace and Debbie Harry and even Jean-Pierre Rampal, the flautist.
Yes.
I assume that was intentional for you.
No, the Jean-Pierre Rampal was an assignment. Like, you guys assigned him to me, but that was a fun
did
episode.
we?
I mean, yeah. There were only a few episodes that I wrote, synopses that I wrote where I really didn't enjoy the episode or it was a slog. Like the Sylvester Stallone. I found that episode just so hard.
Now you must have claimed that. You must have volunteered. For
I did
Sylvester Stallone.
claim it.
Yeah.
I was excited for it, and then I didn't remember how just dreadful it is. Well, I mean,
no.
it's not dreadful. That it's the Muppet Show. It's always quality, but he is just so not fun to watch sing and dance. That guy.
No,
Love him to
famous
bits, but he's
singer
not
and
good at that.
dancer Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, not
That's-
good at it.
no.
Not good at it.
Wow.
But yeah,
News to me.
that was certainly intentional. And then before we get into like the music ones, can we just take a trip down memory lane and talk about that Mum and Chance episode that I wrote?
Yeah.
Just because I think that one was so funny because I found that episode as an adult, rewatching it, really like visually frightening. I found Mum and Chance so scary, the way that they were like molding their faces. There's just a lot that Mum and Chance does on the show that is very strange and surreal. And I sort of wrote the article kind of as a joke that that the episode is a living nightmare. And then we got contacted by Mum and Chance's manager. Do you remember that,
right.
Joe? Yeah,
I forgot.
just feel like
Yeah.
that's worth talking about. Who was like
Yeah.
so lovely. That was like, thank you so much for covering Mum and Chance on the Muppet Show. We can tell, we're sorry that you found the episode disturbing. However, we could tell that you were mostly joking. Like, it was like something like that. And then it was like, we'd love to inform you that Mum and Chance is still touring across Europe constantly, blah, 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 blah. You wrote back a really nice email that was like, oh, thanks so much for getting in touch with us. Thanks for like taking our article, in the humorous intent that it was written, best wishes to Mum and Chance or something like that. But that whole
I love
interaction
that.
was so funny and strange. It was just like, yeah.
Wow. I'm
Anyway.
glad you remembered that. I literally completely forgot about
Yeah,
all
I
that.
just feel like it's worth telling that story. I just thought the whole thing was so funny.
Absolutely. I will say this about Mum and Chance. I saw them perform, I don't know, it's probably 20 years ago at this point. And actually, it was more. I think it was in high school. And my dad was just like, hey, I got us tickets to a show. It's called Mum and Chance. And I was like, no. Like, we're not going to Mum and Chance. Because all I remembered about them was, all any of us really know about them is their Muppet Show episode. And like you said, it's a little disturbing. And I didn't really know at the time, but I can look back now and recognize like the reason I didn't like the Mum and Chance episode was because Mum and Chance couldn't really do much with the Muppets. Like, they had one
That's
talk spot with
correct.
Kermit, but other than that, they can't really do anything with them. So like every time Mum and Chance is on the screen, it's like, well, we got to put the Muppets away while Mum and Chance does something.
Yeah, it was a hard guest because it's very hard for them to do any interacting. And it was definitely
Yeah.
at a point when the show was figuring out what it wanted to be and what sort of guests it wanted to have on as well.
Exactly, yeah. So seeing them live was incredible.
I'm sure it was cool. Yeah.
I can't even tell you, because there's all this stuff that like does not translate when there's a screen between you and the performer. Like when you're seeing them do this stuff live, and it's so bonkers, it's so weird, and it's so like, how would anyone think of this? And even like the stuff that we see them do on the Muppet Show felt very tame compared to what they would do on stage. So
Sure.
if anyone gets a chance to see Mum and Chance live, I highly recommend it.
Yes, that's cool. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad that we talked them up so so high on the podcast because like I did feel a little guilty when their manager got in touch with us, and I was like, oh, I certainly wasn't trying to discredit the good work of Mum and Chance through
I
that
know.
silly article I was writing. Yeah.
There have been times where we've written negative things, and then we have gotten responses from the people responsible for those things, and sometimes we don't really care as much. Sometimes it's just like, well, I mean, sorry, you made a bad thing. I don't know what to tell you. And sometimes it's like, oh no, like I feel horrible because I actually have a personal connection to you, or I
Well,
care so much about your work
it's worth
normally.
remembering that everybody wants things that they work on to be good. And it's also worth remembering that the stuff that we do as a website, we're allowed to have a critical voice if there's something that we think is of a lower quality. Like both those things can be true at the same time.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. I mean, I hate to say, like, we have an obligation to speak the truth as journalists. We have to sometimes say this thing is not good, and I have to stand by my opinion.
That's
Because
right.
the other option is everything is good, and I'm always saying how good it is, and suddenly you can't really trust my opinion. And like I mean, I've done this before. There are things on the website that I've given terrific reviews to because I have I got to go to the set, or I got to meet the person who was responsible for it, or whatever it is. And in retrospect, it's like, well, that's not how this should work. That is not a review that I can stand by, and I have to actively work on not doing that. Just for our readers and for my own journalistic integrity.
It's tricky. Absolutely. Yep. It's very difficult. And definitely set visits, those sorts of things, they're really, 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 really fun, but you kind of have to put them aside and watch the finished product when you review something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Louis, are there other articles that you have a fond memory of writing, or you have a fun experience, or some other story that you want to share, or just something that you
Yeah.
liked?
Well, I'm proud of a few of my articles that I think back on writing in the last 7 years. Like one of them is the Liberace article about the Liberace episode of The Muppet Show. And like, I'll be the first to admit that episode is like also really strange. Liberace does like almost a 20-minute long concert that sort of is most of the show, with like some really lovely puppetry accompanying it by, all the Henson people, but it's like not very Muppety. But like what it is it's like pretty subversively queer for the time on TV. And even like, Liberace keeps saying that the show is a tribute to how beautiful birds are, which you can just look at face value, but I kind of interpret it to mean that he was talking about something else really specific, which really spoke to me, and I hope spoke to queer people watching it at the time. So I thought that was kind of cool, and something I'm just glad I was able to write about on the site. So yeah, I liked that article. Obviously, I loved writing about the Debbie Harry episode of The Muppet Show because, it's so great when I can just sort of mine from like my knowledge of other, musicians and pop culture figures that I know, and like don't have to do a lot of research. And like, I knew sort of where Debbie Harry was at in her career when she was on The Muppet Show, so I was able to integrate that into the episode or into the article pretty well, which I enjoyed. Also, luckily there's a lot of information as to like what she was doing at the time that's pretty accessible. So I learned some things around when she was shooting the episode, and that she went out for dinner the night before with Jim Henson, which is a really fun tidbit. I would have loved to have heard that, been a fly on the wall for that conversation. I'm sure it was very fun. I also know that she was a last minute replacement, I think, for Cher.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that she ended up on because Brian was such a big fan at the time, which makes a lot of sense. So all that I thought was kind of fun and interesting, and like I wish that more of those punky new wave people had been on the Muppet Show, mainly for my own wishes and desires.
Yeah, the Muppet Show. I mean, I think you've written a bit about this, but maybe you could write a little bit more about just the punk rock connection and the punk rock aesthetic of the old Muppet stuff that we've kind of lost in the last 20 years or so,
Yeah, and I think that it's more of a cultural issue than it is like a specifically Muppets issue. That, the thing that makes the Muppets work is that you can really see how they are performed while you're watching them. So much so that there's no arm rod, or there are arm rods, pardon me, that you can see, that there's like a closure that needs to happen between the audience and the Muppet performers to make the Muppets come to life. And that is really special. And I think that that just folds into a lot of what was happening aesthetically in the 70s with culture in general, where you could really see the machinations, and that was part of the fun. And I think that that's like 90% of what makes punk work, is that you can, is that there's a simplicity to what's going on musically, and sort of that idea that anybody can pick up a guitar and play. Like, that's what's so great about punk. And I think that that's where the aesthetics meet the Muppets, and why it works well together when they're paired together. Yeah, and I wish that there had been a little more of that. And I think that now there's so much of a emphasis on things looking quote unquote real. And I think that that's such a shame. And, it's one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of most modern special effects. And I think that sometimes the Muppets fall into that trap as well, by being the modern projects being a little too showy, when they actually don't need as much as what we're getting from them. All we really need is good writing and good performing, and that's all we need to make the Muppets work. And I think that's unfortunately sometimes forgotten in newer projects.
It's funny. It's something that I talked to Matt Vogel about on a podcast on this channel when we were reviewing all of the 2015 Muppets sitcom episodes. And the episode in particular, there was a scene where Miss Piggy is like she's doing like a silk climbing class thing, where she's like basically like she's hanging from a rope and she's swinging around, and I don't know how exactly they did it, but it definitely involved like some green screen and probably several puppeteers, and they try to make it look very realistic. And I said to him, like, what would have looked really good though is if you literally just like stapled her to the rope and you just swung her around like a rag doll.
Yes.
And like that's what they would have done on the old Muppet Show days. But instead, someone made the decision to spend a lot of time and money to make it look real. And it's a different kind of joke. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but, it's not really probably what Jim would have done. I hate to say that, but like,
I know we don't say that a lot when we talk about the Muppets, because we're not like gatekeepers. You know what I mean? So like for you to say that though holds a lot of clout, because you don't say that lightly, and I agree with that. I mean, like, I feel like that was sort of part of the anarchy of the early Muppet stuff that worked so well, is that there was a real understanding that they were puppets and there was people manipulating them. So a big joke that they used a lot was when there wasn't anybody manipulating them and they were being flung around. And that's some of my favorite Muppet jokes. I always love a good Muppet throwing. My personal favorite is when Kermit gets thrown out of Sardi's in Muppets Take Manhattan. Like, it's the silliest looking puppet throw of all time. But also, there's scenes, in both Muppets Take Manhattan and in the Muppet Show, where penguins and chickens are being flung in the air. That is like part of the aesthetic of what makes the Muppets work. And I think that kind of stuff has unfortunately been lost. And it's not really for me to say whether Jim Henson would have done it that way or whether Jim Henson would have done it a different way, because I can't crawl into his brain. But what I can say is that that's part of the aesthetic that I personally like that isn't around anymore.
Right. And I do think that there is a combination of those two ideas that can be done, because we do say like, well, Jim wouldn't have done that, but also Jim didn't have access to the technology that we do now. And we know that Jim probably would have embraced
it.
Yeah, right. He probably would have invented it 20 years ago, but he also would have just like, he would have embraced and used this technology in ways that we can't fathom. That said, like, Jim probably liked throwing penguins, so like he would have done probably a little bit of both, and he would have known what would have been funniest or most successful for the scene of, okay, do we get 4 puppeteers and a green screen and 7 computers involved, or do we just get a staple gun and one person at the bottom just swinging this rope around until until Piggy almost falls off.
Yeah, because what I understand is that all of them kind of loved the chaos, and that's sort of
Yeah.
very, you can really see that shine through in the way the Muppet Show is funny, which is very fast-paced and very chaotic, especially for the time. It's so ahead of its time in that way.
Yeah. And like you said, that there's that punk rock aesthetic of like, I see how they did that. It's raw and it's fun, and I could do that. I didn't do that, but I can sit here at home and I can enjoy it, on my TV screen or my LP player, and appreciate it for what it is.
That's right.
I love that. Yeah, it's very punk rock without the need for spikes and mohawks and weird piercings.
They're not weird. They're just really cool.
They are. Are there other articles or features that you've worked on that you wanna mention here?
Well, something that I really loved was helping you cover the Sesame Street 50th anniversary celebration that was in like the Lincoln Center area when they renamed the street outside of Sesame Workshop's offices to Sesame Street.
Oh, that's right. That was super fun. Yeah.
It was awesome. It was so exciting. Almost every Muppet ever was in attendance, which was so thrilling, and a lot of the humans associated with Sesame Street, which was really exciting. I remember that Sonia Manzano hosted the whole thing, and she looked fabulous. She was wearing like leopard print gloves. I just want to point that out. Looking great, Sonia.
It's important to the story. Yeah.
Very important to the story, yes. And that they sort of did a sketch to sort of kick it off, which was just really charming. There were a lot of kids at the event, which I loved. I love it when I get to watch kids watch Muppets. That's very important to me because like it sort of reminds me why this is all worth it. And then after everything was done, people were milling about and some people were getting pictures. And I was lucky enough to get a picture with Roscoe Orman, who plays Gordon, Bob McGrath, who plays Bob, and Dr. Loretta Long, who plays Susan. And then after the picture had been taken, Loretta Long asked me to hold her hand and help her down the stairs. And I always cry when I talk about this because here's this woman who taught me my ABCs and how to count and really how to be like a good person in the world. And then here I am like 25, 30 years later, and I'm like holding her hand and helping her down the stairs. And for me, that was just a really, really important moment. So it's definitely like one of my favorite Muppet fan moments. Yeah.
You saved her life that night, Louie. God knows what would have happened if you weren't there to hold her hand.
I hope someone else would have helped her down the stairs if I was like, no, I gotta go.
Nobody.
Bye.
You were the only one. You were the only one there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments of that day too was after the like you said, the photo ops and things like that had happened. There was a little bit of we could shoot a little bit of video as press, and we got to interview Cookie Monster and then CEO of Sesame Workshop, Jeff Dunn.
That's right. Yeah.
So the funny thing was, I was told beforehand, okay, so just ask them about, what's the event, why is this special, happy anniversary, whatever. Like keep it, pretty simple. But here's the thing, we've met David Rudman, who was performing Cookie Monster many times. We know him well enough that we knew that we could have a little bit of fun with him. I knew Jeff Dunn at Sesame Workshop, so I felt fully comfortable having a little bit of fun with him. So we asked after we did the tell us about the event, tell us about the street naming, whatever, and they were kind of giving the boilerplate answers that they probably gave to everyone. I said, okay, well, you're CEO of Sesame Workshop. You've been here for a few years now. You're obviously an expert on Sesame Street, so let's give you a little quiz. And he went, oh no. And the video came out, you can watch it on YouTube. It came out so well. He did not come across looking dumb. Cookie Monster was there to make it fun and to help answer the questions. Like, it was great. I was actually really, really proud of how it came out. And honestly, if it hadn't come out well, we wouldn't have shared it online.
Of course not. Yeah.
after the event, the head of Sesame Workshop's PR department came to me and she said, when I heard you say, now we're going to give you a little quiz, she's like, I was ready to jump in and kill ya.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because she's like, the one thing that we don't do is we don't surprise our CEO. And I went, whatever, it's fine. Like I was good with it. You didn't tell me not to, so I just ran with it.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is important about our site is that like we're funny and we're a little mischievous, and I think that that's what makes the site work well. Like it reminds me too of when we covered the opening of the Henson exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image. We made that silly video where we only referred to Kermit as T-Lizard the whole time.
We did,
Yeah.
and I think we kept saying like, Jim Henson, who's that? Who is that?
Yeah, something like
that. Seems like
that.
a joke we would make.
Yeah.
That was super fun. That was also a really fun day for you and me because we got to be there for the press opening of the Museum of the Moving Images Jim Henson exhibition.
Yeah.
And they hadn't put the glass cases up yet for anything.
Yeah.
So it was just like all the Muppets and all this like priceless memorabilia and like historical items are just out for us to we didn't touch any of them, but like we could
I actually have an original Uncle Deadly sitting behind me on my couch from that event.
Oh, that's where that went.
I stole him. Yeah.
Oh, well, you're so cavalier about it.
Yeah.
I just took it.
Come get me, Museum of the Moving Image. Come get me, Henson Archives. I'm a master thief.
You gotta find me first.
Yeah, exactly. I'll leave you riddles 3. And Uncle Deadly will be behind this passageway. Hoo-hoo!
Oh, that was such a fun day. What a great thing. What a great exhibit.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was very exciting. It was nice to feel a part of, I'm so happy that exhibit will be there for hopefully forever. And that we were part of sort of, kicking it off, that these are now important historical artifacts. I think that's great. And that they're there for generations upon generations to love, even if they don't totally get because of like modern issues with the franchises and the properties, why the Muppets are special. That exhibit does a great job explaining why Jim Henson's work was important. Great job.
Yep. Completely agree.
Yep.
Well, Louie, this has been a pleasure. It's been a treat. It's been wonderful talking with you.
I've never cried on a
hour.
podcast before. You did it.
Wow, you did it.
I was
it's
like,
done.
when
it's
I was
recorded.
like, you need to tell the story. I was like, am I gonna cry? I don't know. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. But like, I always cry. I always end up crying with that story.
Well, it wouldn't be a Muppet related project if there wasn't a little bit of heart. So thank you for adding that into this podcast series. So we have one more question for you. Can you please tell me and tell our fine listeners here what you think the next project for the Muppets should be? Like, what's the next thing the Muppets should do to like get back in the spotlight or to continue this growing spotlight or whatever it is? Or just to, like what's proper for this brand for what should come next?
This is a controversial statement. This is not how we all feel across the board for ToughPigs. I really think they should do a 6th season of The Muppet Show like nothing has happened in between. I really, 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 really do. And I think that they should try to replicate the rhythms and the texture of the original show with modern celebrities as the special guests. Because I think that what the Muppet Show does so well is that it takes a very diverse approach to what happens on the show. And that allows there always for being something new on the show. And I totally understand why Jim Henson self-canceled The Muppet Show. He's ready to move on. I know that show was a lot of work. But what I miss is just seeing the Muppets do a variety of things. And that's what they're the best at, is being in a variety show. And the backstage conceit of it just being like a rundown vaudeville show, it's in itself, it's very clear what it is. It doesn't matter that modern audiences might not understand that. It was already a very weird retro thing for the 70s audience that was watching the show. So I don't think it actually matters. I think it's clear enough. oh, it's a bunch of characters, they're putting on a show, and then there's machinations that are happening backstage that are very funny as well. That there's a plot running through it. That's really all we need. And they've tried so hard to reinvent this format that doesn't need reinventing. They tried with Jim Henson Hour, they tried again with Muppets Tonight, they tried again with Muppets Now. None of them work as well as the Muppet Show. So I think that there should just be a new season of the Muppet Show, and have John Mulaney on, and have Kim Kardashian West on, and have whoever, I don't care, have Jake Paul on, I don't care. You can with the variety.
You have to care a little bit to not have Jake Paul.
No,
on the
I want
show.
terrible people on the Muppet Show. I want awful people. No, I don't want awful people on the Muppet Show like Jake Paul. But seriously, I think that it could appeal to a lot of different types of people depending on the guest, or a big different type of audience depending on the guests, and you could do some really, 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 really fun new work with just having there be a new Muppet Show, writing new versions of old sketches, creating new sketches as well, like musical numbers that incorporate the music of the last 40 years. I just think it's a no-brainer, I don't think it's that complicated. And I think it's one of the reasons why that Jason Segel Muppet movie worked so well, is that it's like, this is what these characters are known for, and this is what they should be doing. He didn't really actually try to reinvent the wheel too much, and I thought that was the smart move. Anyway, rant over, but
agree
that's
with
what
you.
I'd like to see them doing.
I agree with you on a lot of those points, and I especially thinking about that may not be a sustainable model for the next 25 years of the Muppets. They're not going to do 25 more seasons of the Muppet Show, but if they can use that as a jumping off point to be like, look, this is what we're really good at. We're going to do another season, maybe even a few seasons of that format that you're super familiar with and that you miss and that we are very, very good at. And then once we kind of establish what exactly it is that people love about the Muppets, then you can expand on those ideas and you can do more specials and movies and spin-offs and YouTube videos and whatever else their hearts desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also a variety show format is already really good for chopping it up into little pieces and posting parts of it online to garner a new fan base. That's the thing. I think that it actually works really well for a modern audience. And another thing that we've been talking about regarding the Muppet Show now being on Disney Plus is that it's the first time in about 20 to 25 years, that the Muppet Show has been readily accessible to an audience, to a wide audience. And I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but specifically the first few weeks that the Muppet Show was released, Twitter was popping off with different people with their own takes on the Muppet Show. And I think that it inspired a whole new generation. It's very diverse, of interesting writers, comedians, and performers who all of a sudden had this renewed interest in the Muppets. And I think hiring a young, diverse staff to write for a new Muppet Show would lead to a really cool show. And this isn't like a pitch to be like, hey, hire me to write the new Muppet Show. I want people.
I mean, it's not a pitch to hire you for the new Muppet Show.
Approached, if Disney approached me and I could submit for it, I would love to. I think that'd be really cool. But I'm talking about comedians, I'm 40. I'm talking about comedians who are in their 20s. I want to see what they do with the Muppets. I think that'd be really exciting. I think that would make them relevant in a way that nobody else has been able to since Jim Henson unfortunately passed, that the Muppets sitcom from 2015, another example of them square peg round hole, them trying to make the characters relevant when really all they should be doing is funny sketches and singing and dancing and a little bit of backstage drama, and that's really all we need from them, for the most part. But I know that not every ToughPigs reader and not every ToughPigs writer feels the same way. I know that this is sort of a hot button issue, and I respect that, and I think that a lot of people have really smart opinions around this, but this is just my opinion about what I want to see.
Sure. We didn't ask every writer and every reader this question. We are asking you this question.
Totally.
This is your opinion, that you're totally valid and supported with this idea.
Thank you.
Louie, this is, like I said, this has been a pleasure. Can you please please tell people where, if anywhere, they can find you on the internet?
Sure, Joe. You can find me. I don't know who that guy was.
Was that your Jimmy Stewart?
Joe, you
Was
can
that Jimmy
find me
Stewart?
on the internet. So, you can find me at louiepearlman.com. It sort of has updates as to what I'm up to. And then you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Louie4711 as well. And, I just have to plug, because it's been such a treat. I've been writing for this Sesame Street podcast that
That's
I
right.
believe the new episodes that I have written for are airing now soonish, to what I understand.
I believe they will be on before the end of the year. I'm not sure exactly when.
Excellent.
But yes, the show is called Foley and Friends. It's on Audible. And the first season's already up, but the episodes that you have written are coming up very, very soon.
Yeah, I wrote 2 scripts for season 2 and 3 scripts for season 3. I'm still in the process of writing the scripts for season 3. I was actually working on that today. Can I give a spoiler? Is that allowed?
Maybe. Try it.
I guess edit it out. I wrote a new song today that I'm very proud of. That's a Hey Jude parody. That's called Hey N. And it ends with a rousing chorus of na-na-na-nas.
That's great. I hope that you don't get sued like Chris Surf and Sesame Street did when they wrote Hey Food.
Well, I very much tried super hard to change the melody enough that it's far enough away that we shouldn't get sued for it, because I had that in mind. Not Hey Food. I didn't know about Hey Food, but because of letter B, which I knew ended up being a big problem for Sesame Street.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. I got my facts wrong. It was letter B that they got sued over, not Hey Food.
So they didn't get sued over Hey Food at all.
No, it was just letter B.
Okay,
You're
well,
right.
that's a really good sign that I should be okay.
Right.
Yeah, because I changed the melody completely, but the structure is somewhat similar. But I intentionally did it so that it is interpolation, homage, parody, obviously, and not a ripoff. That they could be sued over. But yeah, that's been going really well, and it's allowed me to write for Bert and Ernie and Grover, and I just wrote for Gonger today. That was really fun.
Ooh, great.
Yeah, he's sort of my first newbie that I've written for, which is exciting. And, that's just like, as Muppet fans might want to hear, that like my first script was a Bert and Ernie script, and I sat down and I wrote it and I did my work and it went well. And then about like 5 minutes after I was done, I was like sitting down having a rest after I was done my first draft, like, decompressing. And then in my brain, I was like, oh my God, I just had Jim Henson and Frank Oz's voices in my head for the last few hours, and that's legit insane. And it sort of made my head explode. And that was really exciting. So, as a Muppet fan, getting to write for these guys, it's like an absolute dream come true. I am just like head over heels in love with writing for all of them. And I care about them all so much, so I want to do right by them.
Great. I'm so glad that, folks like you, these diehard Muppet fans, are getting this kind of opportunity. So
I agree.
I think everyone is probably really excited to hear what you've written for these characters. So we'll be sure to plug that.
Please tune in. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll plug it on ToughPigs social media, which, by the way, if you do want to follow ToughPigs on social media, you can follow us at ToughPigs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Of course, you can always go straight to toughpigs.com for all of the greatest Muppet news and interviews and commentaries and such that you could possibly find anywhere on the internet. If you like us so much that you want to spend a little bit of money as well, then you can go straight to patreon.com/toughpigs and join our Patreon, where we will give you some really cool things in exchange for your money dollars. In the meantime, please make sure you're heading right back here to this podcast channel for next week's episode of ToughPigs at 20, coming up in just 7 days. See you then. Goodbye.
Bye.